Welcome back to the second part of our lesson on presidential nominations. Here, we're actually going to see how the president is officially nominated to be the presidential candidate from a given party. So let's see how that happens. What's going to happen is we've got a national convention that is a big meeting of all of the most important people in the Republican or Democratic Party. They're going to get together and actually make this choice. Now, remember that the people who actually get to vote are called delegates, and delegate selection is done by the states following a primary or a caucus. But now they're at that convention. Those delegates have been assigned by party leaders within a state and been sent off to this national convention to cast their vote. Now, here they have two main roles. Number one, they are going to be the people who vote on the presidential and vice presidential candidates. Vice presidential candidates get thrown in here as well. The other thing is that they have to write the party platform. A party platform is basically a list of goals of what the political party hopes to achieve over the next 4 years. The party platform is supposed to be what it means to be a Republican or what it means to be a Democrat. It is a list of their core beliefs and objectives, what they want to accomplish. Now, not everybody is aligned with every aspect of the party platform, but the idea is that most Democrats will support most of what's on that party platform, and same for Republicans. Now, an informal role of this party convention is equally important. The presidential, vice presidential candidates, they're usually pretty well set and understood by a convention, but the informal role is important. The informal role is that this is a big party. It's a chance to celebrate what it means to be a Democrat or be a Republican. And they really want to extend these. And they're usually 4 to 6 days in length. And they celebrate, what it means to be a Democrat or a Republican. And the nation really pays attention during this time. You have important people giving important speeches about what they hope to accomplish, what they've done in the past, where they see the nation going, how great it is to be an American, rah, patriotism. And the parties also want to use this opportunity to show that they are a united force. This is especially true after a primary caucus process that can be fairly divisive at times. You get these candidates really going after each other sometimes. The Bernie Sanders and the Hillary Clinton, they want to show the world that they can get along, they can work together. They are, after all, both Democrats. The same, but to a lesser extent, Trump and Ted Cruz tried to do that a little bit at their party convention as well. Now, the idea is that this unity will build excitement amongst their voters, really convince their voters that their candidate can win and really represents them and their views and gets them pumped and ready for the general election. So who generally gets nominated to be a presidential candidate? Well, if you are the current president of the United States and you're not term limited, that is, you've only served one term, you can still serve a second term, you usually get to be your party's nominee. It's a very rare thing for a sitting president to even get a serious challenge from a contender. It does happen. Gerald Ford got a serious challenge back in the 70s. Also in the 70s, Jimmy Carter was a sitting president and got a serious challenge. But we haven't had any serious challenge for a sitting president since the 1970s. Now, if the president does not run, either because they choose not to or because they're term limited, the primary contest can be between lots and lots and lots of people. We saw recently the Republican Party put about 15 people up in their primary process to try to be this candidate. It can get to be very busy. But by the national convention, it's really narrowed down to just a few contenders, because remember, you need that 15% popular vote to even get any delegates. To have any substantial number of delegates, you need to win a number of states, and several of those need to be fairly large for you to really have any sort of crowd at the convention that supports you. Okay, so Another way to look at who gets nominated, let's look at the experience of people. This one's a little outdated, and we'll see that in a moment, but almost always the nominee of a major political party has a well-established record in American government. These are people who have served in American government for a while. They're not newcomers to the political scene. They've been around a little while. People understand their politics, their views, what they think of the world and how they might respond to things. President Barack Obama was a bit of an exception to this just because he hadn't been in government very long before he was elected president, but he certainly had been in government. And if you go back to his time in the Illinois state government, he had a little bit more time there too. But more typically, you have somebody who's been in government for a decade or two before they step up to be a presidential candidate. Now, over the last 100 years, most candidates have been governors of states. That's a big one. If you're a governor of a state, especially a major state like Texas, George W. Bush was a governor of Texas. It's a big state, a lot of population. If you lead a state like that effectively, it can really show the nation that you're an effective administrator. They tend to be members of U.S. Senate. Senators have been popular choices throughout history. Barack Obama came from the United States Senate. You also have former vice presidents. Former vice presidents, not as many of them as you think would become president, not by election or not by nomination at a party convention. But there are certainly a lot of them. The last vice president to become president was the first George Bush. George Bush Sr. was a vice president to Ronald Reagan before becoming president. But we've had Al Gore for the Democrats, who was a vice president and almost won the presidency in 2000. This last one is pretty dated, though. It says, as has every president elected since 1956, meaning every president since 1956 had been a governor, senator, or vice president. Well, Donald Trump did blow that one up, didn't he? That would be 2016. We ended that 60-year streak of governors, senators, and vice presidents, and we got somebody who also has no political experience, has never been in government, and is now the president of the United States. That has never happened in American history. So it'll be interesting to watch and see how that works out. All right, other characteristics. Most presidential candidates are white, male, Protestant. If you look back at the entire history of the United States, this is true for a huge number of our presidents, basically all of them. They have all been male. All except for one has been white. And I do believe John F. Kennedy was the only non-Protestant. So we've got, a lot of white male Protestants in the American history of presidencies. But of course, that's going to have to shift over time with the demographics of the United States changing. They're usually from a state with an above average population. So we're usually looking at presidents coming from New York is a big one, Virginia, Texas, Ohio, California more recently. I've seen a lot of these presidential candidates pop up. Candidates with good public speaking skills. We want our presidents to be able to go out and clearly articulate a message. And the last one is a totally dated statement because I wrote this lesson 8 years ago. No major party has yet nominated a woman for president. Wrong! The Democratic Party, of course, nominated Hillary Clinton to be president in 2016. She did not win that election despite winning the popular vote by the widest margin of any candidate who has not won the presidency through the Electoral College. But doesn't matter. We use the Electoral College, and she did not win. So how are they nominated? The official nominating process. Well, at the convention, they have to receive more than 50% of the delegate votes. So all of the delegates at the convention vote. This is my choice. This is who I want to be our candidate for president of the United States. They all cast that vote. Now, the delegates are supposed to vote as the public has directed them. Okay, so if the state of Michigan says you are supposed to vote for Bernie Sanders or you are supposed to vote for Donald Trump, then you show up and you cast your vote in that way. However, if no candidate receives 50% of the delegate votes on that first vote, then that delegate gets to vote however they want on their second vote. So they're locked in on that first one, but on the second one, they get to vote however they want. Now, that gives them potentially a lot of power here. But the thing is, that has now happened since 1952. No major party has needed a second vote in a convention since 1952. Since 1952, we've gone into every convention knowing who the nominee will be once the delegates vote, because it's been that clear through the primary and caucus systems. It's been close in a few situations, but every time, in the end, it's come out that we knew who the nominee would be before the convention started. So the primary system really chose the president every time for the last 60 plus years. But we do have this convention system in place as well in case the primaries and caucuses can't get there. And that's it. Now we have presidential candidates. And next time we'll be looking at the election itself. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something, and farewell.